Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into how to respond when your child is the bully. And before we get into that, Selina has this week's parenting moment.
All right, we have a son that is an adult living at home, and we've been working on him moving out, and it's been a process and maybe not exactly how I think it should go. But he made the announcement he's moving out, and it was really funny to watch myself because this is something I've wanted for him. But then when he said he was, I was really worried and really scared, and all these other emotions came up. And well, honestly, I woke up one night at like 2 a.m. in a panic about it. And so then that fed into a lot of emotions, and I found myself really getting upset about it. And I know from what I have learned that I was like, you need to have a conversation with him, because I was telling myself a story of what was happening and what was going on. And that was really feeding into my fear and anxiety about him leaving and what that looked like. And so he came home from work, and I was like, hey, I just told him, I was like, hey, I have a story that I'm telling myself about you moving out. And I just want to I want to clarify it with you. My relationship with you is really important. And I just want to tell you what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and what's hard for me. And it was actually really good. Of course, I was worried to have the conversation. I was worried how he'd respond, and if he didn't respond how I wanted him to. And then I knew I'd just be more frustrated. But I felt like it was a really good conversation, and we were able to be open and honest with each other. And it allowed him to give the opportunity to share what he was experiencing or what he was feeling too. But it came down to this is what needs to happen. This is what we've been wanting. But I had to step back, because I was like, I have a story that I think that at a certain age, or he should be at a certain point, or he should be doing a certain thing right now at the age he is. And so that was really bothering me, that he needed to be doing something else and to live on his own or go to school or whatever. And so when that happened, I was upset and had feelings, and I had my own worries and fears about that. So I kind of laughed at myself, like, wait, this is what you wanted. Why are you upset? Why is this bothering you? And so I stepped back and I was like, really? You just don't like uncomfortable emotions, because either one is giving you uncomfortable emotions. And then I think it gives like power and freedom in the situation that we are in, that I was like, hey, it's really just your thoughts that are affecting you in this situation. And so it really can be okay in this situation, and it really can be okay in the other situation, because either one, I'm going to be sad and have my thoughts and feelings about it. And so then it kind of just freed it up, and it made it not so heavy in my mind. Either situation wasn't so heavy and emotionally charged with my thoughts about it. And so I just thought it was great, because then we had a moment that we were able to talk. And since then, I feel like I can be a lot less. Well, I'm still worried. I told him that. I said, you know what? I'm your mom. I'm always going to worry about you. I'm always going to be checking on you. I'm always going to be protecting you. So if that bothers you, I'm sorry, because I'm going to keep doing it. But it was good. Yeah, it was good. It was really it was really frustrating and overcoming me all day, and taking a lot of my thoughts and feelings. But I was glad that I just was like, this is going to be awkward. Just talk to him. And I did. And then I feel like, and nothing changed. The situation didn't change. But because of my thoughts and my feelings about it, I feel like the situation seems a lot less heavy to me.
And what I love about that is you didn't dismiss your emotions. And I think that's a big part of just good emotional regulation, good parenting, and good human being, right? Being a human being is not dismissing the uncomfortable emotions, and not just saying, well, I just shouldn't feel this way. Well, no, there's actually a good reason that you feel this way, and it's important to process it. And the fact that you involved him is great, and that you're able to have that open conversation. It's that modeling that we talk about all the time of, I'm a human being. I'm going to have a human experience and a human reaction, but that doesn't mean I'm stuck in this reaction. I can change it. I have the power to change it, but I have to work through it, which can also happen when you find out that your child has been a bully. And I think we also need to, again, start a little bit the way we did on last week's episode, where just because your child does something mean to another kid doesn't mean your child is a bully. And I want to make that clear. Now, that can be a really great teaching opportunity, and you should step in and teach your child and try to help them see the consequences of their actions. But it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent or your child is a bad kid. It just means, like we said last week, that they are a human being. Now, I thought it would also be kind of interesting to discuss like sibling dynamics. And because I think like an older sibling, it definitely can cross into bullying. Okay. And that can actually happen very easily because oftentimes, like if it's an older sibling, there's that power differential. So, right, the older sibling is bigger. And so oftentimes, like it can cross into bullying, but there's also just normal sibling rivalry stuff that happens, and just normal siblings being siblings and trying to figure out their place in the family and figuring out like family dynamics. So I don't want parents to go out and just say, "Oh, my older sibling did this. They're bullying my younger sibling or my younger kid." That's not necessarily the case. It certainly can cross into bullying. I can think of a few instances where my older brother was maybe being a little bit of a bully, but for the most part, he was just, I don't know, he's just being a typical punk older brother. And that stuff can be kind of normal. I know you guys have a wide age range between your kiddos. What's your experience with this sibling dynamics and potentially bullying?
Our kids never fight, so I don't have any experience with this. Or maybe I'm like, oh, Liz, I'm not talking on this right now because I'm so mad with how they treat each other right now. So I'm not speaking to this.
Well, and they do fight, and there's definitely a little bit of bullying going on, and you got to watch it. I mean, that's your job as a parent, right? And learning, how to manage that. And sometimes, because we have a big family, it's a little bit easier to use, some empathy there and help them like recall being, hey, when your older sister or older brother acted that way, what was that like for you? And help them kind of see how somebody else might be feeling that's bigger and older and has a little bit more power per se in the relationship. And so that's a great way to handle it. I think it's really important too here. We tend to use this word bully pretty freely, and we tend to identify a person as a bully. And I think that's a little bit dangerous as well. Mm-hmm. And we kind of combine their actions with their identity as a person. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that their actions are separate from who they are as an individual. The actions aren't great necessarily, and sometimes they're downright mean, but it doesn't mean that they can't change and they can't overcome that. They can't become who they really want to be, and they can't act the way they want to be. So labeling a child as a bully is not my favorite. I'd rather us talk about those behaviors and help our kids to understand the hurt, the pain, the destruction and damage that can come from the actions of bullying.
Yeah, so I guess this episode is for me because I'm sitting here thinking I'm frustrated with how my kids are treating each other, but I really have been like, why are you acting like this? Why are you doing this? And really, I need to figure out what's going on for them. What are they experiencing? Why are they acting that way? Because there's something that's going on for them that they are responding the way that they are to each other.
And that's so important for us to remember that. If we look at historic bullies, there's always something complicated in the background, right?
Yep.
There's unmet needs, there's insecurities. Often they've been bullied themselves, maybe at home by a parent or by an older sibling. And this is just the way they know how to manage. It's what they've been taught. It's what's been modeled for them. Their emotions are dysregulated. There's something going on that is typically creating that. And I think if I got that dreaded call from the school that says, hey, your kid was being a bully, we're going through this process, blah, 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 whatever it looks like, my first step's probably going to be looking at a professional counselor to figure out what's happening for them and start getting them the help that they need so that we can move more into healthy behaviors and healthy attitudes.
Right. And, I really appreciate what you said of usually there's something going on at home, and that is certainly the case, but there can also be not something going on at home, right? Or you can be trying to do, like, I don't want to say that the responsibility is always on the parents, right? Because sometimes you can have, I'm not going to say you have the perfect home life because that's just impossible, but you can be doing everything you can as a parent and your child can still be acting out and having these behaviors that are classified as bullying. When you do get that call and you're like, whoa, 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 what is, like, my child? No way. And I think that's really common as a parent. Is our first instinct is often not my kid, there's no way, or you want to look for an excuse of, well, this kid must have been doing something to deserve it. And I think that's normal to see that, especially if it's not typical of your child at home. So acknowledge those emotions, and then, I think it's absolutely appropriate. The very first step is to have a conversation with your kid about it. Say, hey, I got this phone call. Tell me what's going on, which is a much better response of, why are you doing this to this other kid? Like, why are you acting this way? As opposed to, tell me what is happening in this situation. They're two totally different conversations there.
Yeah. And, we want to be careful. I love our teachers and our school systems, and a lot of these folks do some great things, but they don't always have all the information either. So when we get that call, certainly we're going to have to do our own work as parents and investigate and understand what's happening and why things are happening. And hopefully we've built a relationship with our child that is open enough that they're going to share with us what's going on. And if not us, hopefully a counselor or something like that, if that's what we need to do. But yeah, I love that you're differentiating that, Liz, and that we need to come from a place of curiosity, like, help me understand, what are you experiencing? What's going on for you? Is this peer pressure? Because it can come from a lot of social pressure. Maybe friends are that way. And it could be crowd mentality, right? We could have a group of people that are picking on somebody at school. And sometimes we step out of our normal behaviors and do something we wouldn't normally do because the crowd is doing it. And so there could be a lot of reasons. And getting into it with our children and understanding, like, what's happening. What a great place to start. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I also appreciate what you said about schools not always getting it right either. So I remember an experience when I was in high school. There was like rumors going around of some upcoming kerfuffle with my brother and this other student. It was over a girl, and so they passed each other in a narrow hallway, and they kind of bumped shoulders, and they kind of started to, like, push at each other a little bit. And my younger brother goes, I'm not going to hit you. And so this kid just flat out decks my brother in the face. And then my younger brother still goes, I'm still not going to hit you. And so this kid proceeds to just deck him in the face again. And another student who saw this whole thing and wanted my brother to, he wanted to see the fight. He came in and pulled this other kid off. My brother got suspended for 3 days for doing nothing. And so, in that instance, like, and I'm not going to say that my younger brother was completely blameless, because I'm sure he'd done something that made this kid feel like, yeah, no, you deserve to get the snot beat out of you, but that doesn't mean that it was the right thing for this kid to do. But in that instance, I'm like, why did my brother get suspended? In fact, this kid was wearing a class ring, and my brother actually had to have reconstructive surgery because he shattered the bones in his orbital socket. And so, I still like to tease my brother that he's had plastic surgery, but That's, that's just a side thing. But, I mean, like, I'm like, why is my younger brother the one getting in trouble for this kid who is, clearly the majority in the wrong here? So I think it is important, or that's just a good way to speak to schools don't always get it right. And obviously my brother wasn't necessarily the instigator or the bully in this case, but it's just a good example of, like, sometimes schools' zero tolerance policy is crap.
Oh, it absolutely is. I actually disagree with it. And we could speak for 2 or 3 podcasts on that alone, but that's not where we're going to go today. and so I appreciate the clarification there on the schools just don't always get it right, and it's okay. But our job as parents is to get it right, is to figure it out, and is to be in our kids' corner. And sometimes even if they are the bully, we need to be in their corner, but not in a way where we condone or approve of that type of behavior, but in their corner in the sense of helping them get through whatever it is they're dealing with, and learning about the consequences of that kind of behavior, learning to take responsibility for their actions, and accepting the consequences. Sometimes, I'm not a huge fan of punishment, but I know that in some cases there's got to be consequences for our actions, right? We're not teaching them anything if they don't have some sort of consequence, if they're bullying other children.
And helping them to see the consequences of their actions, and, helping them to own up to that actually is a great way to be in their corner, because you're teaching them valuable life lessons. And, that is, I think holding your child accountable is one of the best and most effective ways to be in their corner, because just bailing them out or excusing away their behavior, that's just going to enable them, and it's just going to create further problems down the road. Not teaching your kids accountability is, I think, one of the worst things that you can do as a parent, or just defending their behavior, or putting the blame on somebody else. If you just go in there and say, well, my kid's bullying this kid because they did this to them. And it's like, okay, yes, you need to address what this other kid's behavior. Yeah, oftentimes it is a two-way street. And I think that is very much the case when, a kid is bullying. It's because sometimes the kid is doing something to ask for. And neither behavior is okay, but just making excuses for your kid and just letting them be the victim is not helpful for your kid.
Yeah, and I think that leads us down to another topic here, and that is helping our kids to understand the impact of their actions, right? Because
yes.
I have to believe, and maybe I'm naive here, but I have to believe that most of the time kids really aren't, their intent isn't real deep and permanent harm or damage. It's sometimes they think they're funny, or they think that, it's okay and it's not that big of a deal. And it's not necessarily their desire to deeply hurt someone, but helping them to understand, like, man, there's real consequences to our actions. And so, this other individual might be deeply hurt by what you've said or what you've done. And
well, speaking to some of these outside things like other people or schools and how that affects us and how it affects our kids, I think it just comes back to what we've kind of already talked about, but just understanding that sometimes we can't control those outside circumstances that are affecting our kids or what's happening, but we can control us and how we respond and help our kids with understanding and controlling themselves. So taking those opportunities to teach them and to help them understand, and then, moving forward with what we're talking about is there's consequences for our actions, regardless of the outside people affecting that, or if they're doing it right or wrong or however. But how can I control myself? How can I respond the way that I want? And then following through with those consequences that come, and understanding that, it is going to affect other people, and it is going to have some consequences. This is a good opportunity of like a character building opportunity, right? We're looking for opportunities to help them in their life to become the people that they want to be. So this is just another opportunity for growth and to learn and to decide for ourselves who we want to be and how we want to act.
Yeah, I think empathy can be a very powerful tool while also acknowledging, I think for some teenagers, that might not always work because I think there's times where maybe they might not care, or they might just say, oh, well, I don't care how they feel, they deserved it. And so I think, again, going back to that, all right, well, you can't control how other people are going to react. You can't control what this kid is doing. You can only control what you are doing. And so I think, again, this idea of instilling natural consequences could be your best instance. I think I shared this story last week of this girl who got kicked off the bus because she had done something. And so she told her dad, hey, I'm going to need a ride to school. And the dad was like, nope, you're going to walk to school. And he followed her in his vehicle the entire way to school because, well, she had gotten kicked off the bus. And so she had to find her own way. That's a great example of a natural consequence. And I think it might have been because she was doing something to another student. She was saying something or doing something that wasn't appropriate to another student. That's a great natural consequence. I'm sure she learned a very valuable lesson of, hey, I can't just treat people this way, or at least we hope that she did.
Yeah, you can't force them to learn anything, right?
Yep.
And we got to remember that. But a lot of it really comes down to the idea of helping our kids discover who they want to be as a human being. How do you want to show up in the world? What do you want to look like? What's important to you? And they may not care. We may go through some phases that are pretty difficult, and there might just be some really hard consequences that they experience that come through maybe a school or even legal consequences, especially when we get into things like online bullying and things of that nature. If it gets really, really serious, we can face some pretty hefty consequences, right? And so those consequences may come, and helping our children to understand, like, hey, there's consequences for our actions, and it's kind of out of our control as parents sometimes. And so it really is a process, and this all gets back to the need for connection, right? There's something going on for them. There's difficulties going on for them. And the more connection we have as a parent with our children, the more we can develop, the greater influence we're going to be able to have in their lives to help them overcome these struggles.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned online bullying, and we could do an entire separate podcast episode on that, but I do think it is worth mentioning. And that one of the reasons that online bullying is so prevalent is because it is so much easier to do than in person, because you can just say something and you don't get that face-to-face reaction, right? So like, maybe somebody posts a picture of themselves and you're sitting here thinking, wow, that dress is so unflattering and that angle is absolutely terrible. It's so easy to just say that, and then you don't see the physical pain that you might be causing to that person. And so I do think that it is important to have that conversation with kids about online bullying and the importance of thinking before you post, right? And consider, what would it feel like if somebody said that to me, or just helping them to understand you don't know how your words are going to affect somebody, and you may never know because you're not going to have that in-person tangible reaction with somebody, which just again speaks to the dangers of the online world. And again, like, there's so many great things about technology, and man, do I love being able to just Google random questions that my kid has. My son might ask me, hey, how much does a pterodactyl weigh? I'm like, I have no idea, but Google knows. Okay, so yes, there are great things about the online world, but it's so important to teach kids that it is intangible, it's not real, and the dangers that you can do with online bullying.
Yeah, it is crazy. And, online bullying doesn't happen just with kids. This is happening with
Yes.
adults. We see it all over social media.
Oh, it's so true.
We see the cruelty, and, they're often called keyboard warriors, and for a reason. It's real easy to sit behind a screen and to say mean, hurtful, awful things without any real consequence quite often, right? But again, this is where our job as parents is really important, that we teach our kids that there's real people on the other end of those things quite often who are feeling hurt or whatever. And is this the kind of person that we want to be? Is this how we want to show up in the world? Is this kind of the label we want put on ourselves? Or are we going to be a bigger human being, a better human being? Are we going to recognize that kind words do a whole lot more, and that not everything has to be said, especially not on the internet? And it's okay to just move on past something that maybe you disagree with or don't like or whatever. We don't have to be mean about it. We can just move forward.
Man, that's another really important lesson to teach our kids from an early age, is you don't have to agree with somebody to be kind. And this is a huge problem in society today with adults, where it's like, if you don't agree with me, then you're my enemy and I can't have anything to do with you. Man, that is a toxic part of our culture. And so I think, we can teach kids from a young age is, you're going to meet people that you disagree with, but just saying you're wrong or you're stupid or I don't like that, that is bullying behavior. Okay. You don't have to agree with anybody to be kind. That lesson would go a long way in today's society.
Well, and I love that you brought that up. I feel like I've experienced that a lot lately, where others that I've been around, we don't see things eye to eye. And I'm talking about people that I love and respect deeply and that love and respect me. And it's okay. Like, it's really not that big of a deal. We can have a difference of opinion and respect one another in our world. And I think that's really the essence of what we're talking about here in teaching our children to treat others with kindness and respect. We don't have to be their friend. We don't have to go hang out with them, but we can respect them as a human being, as a person, and give them that respect that everyone deserves.
Yeah, I mean, religious difference, as I think, is such a great example of that. Maybe you have somebody who is Christian and somebody who is Jewish. You're going to have differences in religion. You're going to have cultural differences, and that's okay. And I think that's actually a great thing. And what a great opportunity to learn something from somebody else. And rather than just saying, well, you don't celebrate Christmas, well, that's weird. Or, oh man, that must suck. It sucks for you that you don't get to celebrate Christmas. That's not a great way to treat a difference. Instead, you can teach our kid, hey, tell me about what you do celebrate instead. Or, it's just a great opportunity to learn. And so creating this idea of curiosity instead of just mocking what you don't understand. Okay, so I do also want to backtrack a little bit, or just bring up something that Jeremiah brought up in the beginning, of the idea of possibly seeking professional help for bullying, because I think sometimes kids may have something deeper going on. And if they just have this persistent problem of they're just unkind to people, then or they just have this consistent pattern, and it doesn't matter how much you talk to them, or it doesn't matter how much you try to help them see what's going on or the effects that the consequences of their actions, then yes, I think there are times where it is absolutely appropriate to get your kid some professional help, because there's clearly something deeper going on. And as a parent, you may not be able to address that, and you may not be able to help your kid with it, and that's okay. Parents cannot can't always fix everything that's wrong with their child. The same way that we would go see a doctor if your child has a broken bone, or if your child has something going on with their mental health, then seek professional help. You can't fix everything with your child, and it doesn't make you a bad parent. It just makes both you and your child a human being that have complex needs.
Very true. Professional help is could be a wonderful thing in working through those struggles and helping them move forward and addressing the whatever struggles they're dealing with in their lives.
Yep. Okay, final thoughts.
I think that it's important to make sure that we are separating their behavior from their identity. Calling them a bully, I think that would be damaging to their identity. They're just something that they're trying to work through, an experience they're trying to learn and grow from. And so helping them understand that this is just an opportunity for you to learn and grow and develop. And this is something that you can learn from, and it's not who you are, but it's just something that you're experiencing and can work through.
Yeah. And, be patient with yourself as a parent as you go through these processes with your children and they deal with these things. Be patient and kind to yourself, be patient and kind to your child, and focus on building that connection. Build the connection, then figure out the struggles, work with them, use curiosity, and help them to find the solutions themselves. Can be a powerful tool in these kinds of situations.
Yeah. And so for my final thought, I was thinking, maybe asking yourself the question when you have that first big initial reaction, what am I making this mean about me? A question that Selina has often said. And so, maybe check yourself, and it's like, does my child's behavior, am I reacting because it's making me look bad as a parent, or am I reacting in a way that's going to help my child be accountable? Because I think it's normal in a sense to at first maybe internalize, what did I do wrong as a parent because my child is bullying? And it may have nothing to do with you. It could be an opportunity for reflection. It's like, oh, wow, maybe I was doing that to someone and my child is picking up on my behavior. I'm not saying that you can't reflect and improve as a parent, but just kind of check your initial reaction and check how you're feeling about yourself as a parent in these instances. Okay, so next week we are going to get into helping teens trust themselves, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.